answer this question. There seems to be a mild case of reefer madness hysteria taking place. But in any case, in the Tobacco Act, a person can cultivate up to 15 kilograms of tobacco at home. And but who do we know that does that much? In the country today, there must be tens of thousands of places who are growing marijuana in their homes illegally. So I'm curious about how do you address this issue? It hasn't seemed to cause a major concern before, unless I'm missing something, of police swooping in on 4 plants, 6 plants, 8 plants, or whatever. And also, if you take a look at the Tobacco Act and the exemption, it's manufacturing for personal use. That goes on everywhere across this country, and yet we don't hear that much outrage and hysteria saying, please don't grow tobacco in my 100-unit apartment building because I could get sick as well. So I'd like to have some kind of balance in terms of approaching this issue, if anybody would care to address it.
Okay, that's addressed openly to anybody in the panel who wants to start. Mr. McCauley and then Mr. Page.
Thanks for the question, Senator. I think one of the differences, or one of the primary differences, first of all, the availability of tobacco. I think despite recent efforts to crack down on it, tobacco is very readily available everywhere. There's no need to grow it at home. And I would submit the same would likely happen with marijuana, given there's a fundamental difference in Canada versus many other jurisdictions that have legalized marijuana, including most of them in the States. In Canada, it will be available by mail. It will be available, the provinces will make it available, and where it's not available by the provinces, you can go online and the federal government will make it available. So home delivery, you have to keep in mind, in Colorado and those other states, doesn't exist. In fact, the Colorado Senate just voted it down. So Canada, unlike any other jurisdiction, should have an ample supply of available marijuana to everyone who wants it. So why would you go through or want to risk the potential consequences of growing it in home, where your possession, I think the possession limit when you're transporting it on yourself is 30 grams, and there's no limit in your house. So all the marijuana you could possibly need will be made available by the provincial and federal governments without any of the attendant risk or confusion outlined by the Canadian Federation of Municipalities, Realtors, Home Inspectors, Appraisals. I mean, the list goes on. So I think that's one of the fundamental reasons we see that this does not solve any problems, yet potentially creates many.
Mr. Page.
I was going to respond to that, and also the questions around how big a space are we actually talking about here. I mean, tobacco plants can get quite large. Cannabis plants can get quite large as well. But in general, on a commercial setting, we're talking about 1 plant per 1.5 foot. So, in the area that I'm sitting here, this would be the area suitable for 4 plants. And they might, in terms of, I think people are going to 5 kilos annually with like maximum capacity, not a sort of corner of an apartment or the patio of someone's condo. It's, these are like the largest cannabis plants in the world could generate that kind of volume of material. Dr. Small referred to Prairie Plant Systems earlier. This was the commercial producer in Saskatoon that had the contract for so many years. I think they were about 30 grams per plant on average per harvest. So, it's not a huge amount of material. It's not bales of cannabis that are being produced. And in terms of the moisture, I mean, you can have, Norfolk pines to the ceiling in your apartment. You can have ficus. You can have other plants. And, you water those plants every day and they're generating moisture. It's not particularly damaging to the house or to the patio. Obviously we could plant a fir tree in an apartment and it would be damaging, but that's not what we're talking about with cannabis. I think as well, what we're hearing from the law enforcement representatives is a very important description of the world that they've been working in for a number of years, where we've had a black market in cannabis and there has been overgrow from cannabis. Canada's medical cannabis producers, in some instances, supplying a black market. And I think what we have to think about with Bill C-45 is we're trying to close that off. We're going to have a legal supply the idea that, you know, basements and garages and barns are going to be filled with these illicit grow ops, and we can extrapolate the sort of problems with mold and moisture and smell and the rest of it to this very small, limited 4-plant limit, is not realizing that legalization is happening and prohibition will soon be over.
Okay,